Welcome to the Whole Enchilada, a community of high achievers that fight the status quo, rebel against mediocrity, and make life happen. Let's go. Hey, Enchilada Nation, really excited about the opportunity for our conversation today. Not only do I have an incredible guest with a ton of knowledge, I have one of my really great friends, Patrick Woods, on the call with us today. Patrick and I met several years ago, and it was one of those instant connections, probably more so for me than it was for you, Patrick.
I don't think so.
Because you were in Utah teaching a whole group of people, and I was like, I like this guy. I resonate with him, and our friendship has just grown over time. And not only is Patrick a close friend of mine, he's also my coach, and I hire Patrick to coach several people within my organization to help them become better leaders. So, Patrick, I've been really looking forward to this conversation. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I know all about you, but a lot of our people don't know all about you. So give us a little bit of your background.
Okay. So I'll give you the Reader's Digest version as fast as I can. Married 18 years as of just this week. Have 2 boys and just awesome family. So on the business side, I've owned a .com back in the day when those were actually cool to own. I rode that roller coaster up and rode it all the way down. Got in, left that and went into commercial, rode commercial up, rode that down. And then I got into residential real estate in 2005. So I got in right at the peak of the market and kind of, so if you want to follow anybody on where not to jump into a new industry, it'd be me. So started out as a residential agent, then got into leadership at Keller Williams, ran 3 different market centers. I shut one down, turned one around, and the last one was #1 in all of Keller Williams. And now I'm a coach with MAPS Coaching. I own 3 market centers, and we're launching a 4th, and have a real estate team and go travel, speak, train, and coach, consult. So there you have it.
Awesome. Yeah, I know everywhere. I mean, you just got your finger in a lot of things like me. I think that's why we resonate so much.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. And one of the things I love is, and anyone in the KW world, or honestly, really in the real estate world, knows the name and the influence of the impact you've had for a lot of people. It's funny everywhere I go, same thing, when you connect with a different group of agents across the country at different speaking events and things like that, you play the game of, well, do you know this person? Do you know this person? Yep. And you're like the Kevin Bacon of real estate. Everyone's only a few steps away from knowing Patrick, right?
That's funny. I tell my wife, I'm like, yeah, you know what? Because of this company and everything that we've done inside here, there's probably not a airport that I could, or a city that I couldn't fly into and have a place to crash.
Yep.
Just because, it's just a great networking opportunity. And it's been great to meet so many wonderful people. And I'm grateful for this company because I met somebody like you. So
yeah, well, thanks for that. So there's a lot of things we could talk about today, and we're going to kind of let the conversation go to where it goes. But I thought it'd be interesting to start our conversation around leadership. This is something that's come up with a lot of the conversations with the people that I coach recently is the idea of, I want to grow, and they're thinking about growing their business. And sometimes I pull the question back to, honestly, the only thing that's keeping your business from going to the next level is your personal growth. You have to grow to the level of leadership where your business is going, not the current level of your business. And obviously you're one of my mentors in the leadership arena. So let's start the conversation there. For you, what is leadership?
That's a broad question. So, you think leadership is influence, right? And so the thing so at the end of the day, if I ask anybody, are you a leader? Everybody should say yes, right? You're a child, a son, a daughter, a sibling, a parent, a business owner, whatever it is, you are leading somebody. And so everybody is a leader, and to take an intentional path into leadership is quite the endeavor. And so I'll just tell you what kind of got me hooked on that was, one, running my own company, being an entrepreneur and a capitalist from day one, the opportunity. And you just realize at some point you cannot succeed alone, especially if you want to build a big world. And for me, the biggest thing that fills my bucket is when I can help other people influence their own world and impact other people's world. So when you start realizing leadership is multiplication, not addition, that's kind of what got me down that path of, okay, and everything I share is probably going to be in a real estate context. I know this is not a real estate podcast, but that's my world. And so if the average agent has a sphere of influence of 250 people, and I'm an agent, I have the opportunity to impact the world of 250 people. If I jump into leadership and now I'm overseeing an office with 100 agents, that have a database of 250 people. I've now multiplied my influence, right? And so that was kind of the thing that got me hooked on going down this leadership path under the Keller Williams umbrella. So,
yeah, I mean, it's very similar to my path, that idea of the idea of I'm impacting my world and I want to continue to have an impact. And if I want to impact more people, I have to grow my world, right? And impact through others, which is an interesting transition.
Well, and you and I have talked about this in the past, where in our world, we have so many things going on. There's just no way. And this is the growth part, because we try to do it all of ourselves, but there's just no way. There's too many things and we won't do any of it very well. And so the only way that we can do that is to grow our leadership skills and impact other people's world and get them to be part of ours to help us win. It just goes back to that old Zig Ziglar quote. If you help enough people accomplish their goals, your goals will take care of themselves. I know I butchered the quote, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Close enough. You get the gist of it, right? Yeah, I want to go back to something you said, because I think this is interesting. A lot of times when I bring up leadership to somebody, they say something along the lines of, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to babysit people. Like I became an entrepreneur, so I don't have to babysit people." It's funny to me how many people equate leadership to babysitting, and I'm like, that is not what leadership is. Do you hear something along those lines?
Well, yeah. And I hear people say they start building out their team or stuff like that. And they go, you know what, I'm going to get rid of everybody. It's just going to be me, because I stink at management. I'm not good at managing people. And the problem is that they're putting a ceiling on their own future by making decisions like that. And sometimes it's a lens that we look at things. So I'll use an example. I was having a conversation earlier today with somebody that was looking at a different opportunity. And they're like, oh my gosh, if I do this new opportunity, it's going to be this, and it's going to be amazing, and it's going to be great, and it's going to do this. And where I am is awful and horrible. I'm like, you got to be really careful not to look at things through either brown colored lenses or rose colored lenses. You got to be really, and so onto your point on, I don't want to babysit people, that is a perspective, and it's shifting your perspective or your context of it to, I have the opportunity to influence people, not babysit them.
Yeah, I love that term perspective, because going back to the idea that you talked about where everyone is already a leader of somebody, right? Like the truth is it all starts with self-leadership. Because if we can't self-lead and be a great leader to ourselves, the probability of us being a great leader to someone else is zero.
Well, yeah. So the person that says, I don't want to do this because I don't want to babysit people, I guarantee you they have a vision for their future that's probably much bigger than where it currently is. And they may not get there if they don't change that belief. Does that make sense? Like
100%.
If they're looking at it that way, they're never going to attract the right people. They're not going to get them doing the things that they need to do so that they can win. And that in turn will not allow them to win.
Yeah. And I think that goes along the lines with the example you just gave of that agent and talking about this huge opportunity they have in front of them, yet they're living in a little bit of a mess now. They're going to take the exact same skills, self-leadership skills, to the new opportunity. And it may be an incredible opportunity, but if you don't have the ability to self-lead to results, the result you're going to create, even in that rosy environment, is going to be brown colored lens.
Well, you jump over that new opportunity that you had in the rose colored lens, and then you realize the real world happens. And now it's not everything you thought it was going to be, because you were emotionally attached to an outcome and emotionally attached to, wow, this isn't working. So when you're leading people, one of my old coaches, they said, there is no cure for the human condition, which means people just are people. They're going to show up the way they show up. Yep. And I think this is a part of leadership, is when you take a leadership role. So there's difference from, like, everybody's a leader. And so they're going to get into a conversation with a friend that's going through something, and they're going to coach and consult and lead them through that, or be by their side through that. But when you actually choose a leadership role, you have to show up and meet people where they are. The people you're leading sometimes can show up how they show up, depending on the role that they're in. But I don't get to always just show up the way I show up, because that's not going to impact or influence them, right? So if somebody's showing up where, like, if I'm a high D using the DISC assessment, and I go, well, I'm not a high I, and I'm not social and chatty like they are, and so that just doesn't work for me. Well, I'm in a leadership position. The way I'm going to win them over and impact their life is maybe slowing down a little bit and engaging in a conversation. And then, and I'm saying that authentically, not manipulative, right? But meeting them where they are so that they can get to where they always wanted to go. And when you do that, all of a sudden your world opens up even more. So
yeah, that was a big aha for me earlier on in my career. I went through this arrogant stage of why aren't all these people just wanting to work with me? Right. Of like, I'm fast paced, I'm making things happen. And some people jumped on the train, and some that were also high D fast paced people, and other people that I was like, oh, they're for sure coming. They'd be like, no, I was stressing them out because I was showing up the wrong way to be the leader they needed.
Well, when you had so we'll use high D, and for people that aren't familiar with the DISC, just think of type A, right?
Yep.
So when you were building your business with a bunch of type A personalities, how was that working for you?
Oh, I was doubling down on my problem. Like every problem I brought to the table that thought I was fixing through people, I was doubling down on the same problem.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example on that, because now you're just like, you get a bunch of people that act and behave like you, and to build a solid organization, you don't want everybody to act and behave like you.
Yep.
And so with us, we do behavioral assessments, right? And I would sit down with somebody I'm hiring, and I would say, hey, if we put these two charts or graphs or whatever the assessment tells you side by side, where are we going to complement each other? And they would say, well, you're a high D and a low I, and I'm not as high of a D as you, and I'm a way higher I. So I'm a fill in that gap where you're charging them out, and I can provide the warm fuzzy or the rah rah. Great. Where do you think we might have the most conflict? And it's the exact same spot. And so it's just one that helps me to create an awareness with somebody I'm bringing on the team that, yeah, you're complimenting my deficiencies, I'm complimenting yours in those behavioral styles. And we're probably got some friction in that as well. And we got to be okay with that, because that's part of building the team.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. Because I've made that mistake too, where you identify where we're going to complement each other, but you don't take the time to recognize that that's also where going to be is going to be our biggest success, but it's going to be our biggest point of friction as well.
Well, yeah. So like, the thing I know about you is you have an amazing team around you, right? And so when you say you get this idea, next thing I know is you, and we've shared this from the past, you got a pro forma the next day, you've got the marketing collateral to go with it. And so for me, I look at that and I go, this may or may not be true in your world. I look at it and go, I move really fast, and I need somebody that's going to be behind me dotting the I's and crossing the T's, which is when you come up with your pro forma and stuff.
Yep.
Where I'm going to get an issue with that is that they're not moving as fast as I am. Right. And I just have to know the reason why I hired them is not because they move fast, but because they're going to fix all the things I will miss because I move too fast.
Yeah.
Right. So not to go too far down that behavioral, but that's also part of leadership, is knowing that I have to build a well-rounded team. And as the leader, I get to meet people where they are and not just show up the way I want to or the way God made me. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a big piece of that conversation in leadership is that a lot of times we hire and attract people almost for selfish purposes, right? Like, I recognize this gap within my world. This person is wired in a way that they can fill that gap for me. Yep. Now, your job is to accelerate my career. Because to give an example, the administrative example of that, I tell my administrative people, like, hey, I move fast, and my intention is I'm throwing stuff over my shoulder, and it's messy back there. And every once in a while, I'm going to look over my shoulder, and your job is to have it all lined up, cleaned up, arranged. And if it's clean, we keep going. If it's messy, I got to come back and fix the problem. And so I kind of articulate it that way. But the piece I was missing when I first started articulating it that way is I also got to make sure that it's not just making it about me progressing my career. It's, as I'm clearing the path, you're coming with me. This is a win for you too.
100%. It is, Lauren in my world. And so
she's incredible.
And was it incredible always? No, there's hiccups, there's all that kind of stuff. There's ways for me to learn to be a better leader. And in that, she's been with me for 5 years. And I've watched her grow from a base, like low base income, to making 6 figures. And that, watching her grow, your business grows to the extent that you do, watching her personal growth trajectory and her income growth trajectory, because she's added more value and grown herself. That's the most rewarding thing, above and beyond even the value that she adds to my business. Is I'm making that kind of an impact, and she sees herself much bigger than she saw herself when she joined my team.
Yeah, no, and to me, that is the ultimate reflection of leadership, right? If you are growing leaders within your world, and going back to John Maxwell, obviously the pinnacle of talking about leadership, and in the 5 levels of leadership, that is the pinnacle of leadership is, are you growing and creating leaders behind you, right? Yep. And that's a great example of exactly how your leadership is showing up.
Yeah, that's the fun part. That's the rewarding part that gets you through all the other parts where you're like, man, I didn't take this job to be babysitting people, right? When you're watching the person who you thought you might be babysitting become your biggest advocate, right? That's always fun for me, is the people that are kind of the naysayers, you know, the ones that you'd feel like are, for lack of a better term, the drama, right? People are just people, and they're just going to show up the way they show up. If I can, like, I'll give you an example. When I took over one office, we rolled out this new technology, I don't know, almost 10 years ago now. And the whole office wasn't really excited about it. And I took the most negative person about it, and I brought him into my office, and I said, hey, let me show you this, and let me show you how this works, and let me show you what this is going to do. And so when we had the team meeting with the entire office in there to talk about this new technology, and I knew I was going into a little bit of the firing squad, and the most negative Nelly in the whole office stood up and said, I met with Patrick and he showed me how to do this and do this. And I got 5 appointments just by doing what he told me. Everything stopped in its tracks. Right. And the whole office bought in, because that person who everybody looked at going, here he comes again. I invested in him, changed its perspective on me, and everybody knew him to show up that way. So when he was a raving fan, everybody's like, whoa, okay, there must be something to this, which made my life easier. So that's sort of going back to the whole babysitting thing. I think you go through that and people get burnt out. But if I spent 30 minutes with one of those people and change their world, my life gets exponentially easier for just a small investment of time, as opposed to a long period of going, oh, this is draining me.
Which goes back to the comment you made earlier of leadership is about multiplication, not addition, right?
Totally. Well, it's about working smarter, not harder. It's about investing in people. It's about, so leadership is teaching people how to think so they do what they need to do so they can have what they've always wanted to have. Right. Yep. I learned that from one of my mentors. And it starts with me. I got to make sure that my head's screwed on straight, so I'm thinking the way I need to think. And I think that's another point of leadership is I'm fairly modest. And so I have a really hard time, and I'm being super modest, telling you I'm modest, right? I'm super humble. Just ask me. And so the thing I didn't give a lot of weight to was how much I could impact my environment, right? I was like, I'm just one person. I'm just Patrick. And gosh, if I'm having a bad day, doesn't mean that's going to impact the rest of the organization. Yeah. And then I started taking a step back and going, wow, I had a bad week. And now my staff's having a bad week and the rest of the office is having a bad week. Yeah. Wow, I had a great week. Now my staff's having a great week and the rest of the office is having a great week. And so leadership is, one, you got to grow yourself, and 2, you got to make sure you suit up and show up when you need to, where it's like, okay, you walked out of this bad appointment where you're something failed over here, and you got to go into this appointment and stand in front of a group and absolutely deliver, because if you deliver in that group, it's going to make the rest of your day that much better. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just one of those lessons I learned, because I don't want to put a whole weight into one person being me. Yeah. And you realize that as you climb that leadership ladder, your influence and your impact on the energy you bring every single day can dramatically impact the organization to the positive or the negative. Yeah, and that leadership is in a lot of ways a heavy responsibility to wear and carry. Have you seen all the gray? We weren't recording when we were talking about our gray hair conversation, because we're both going. It's a race to see who goes all the way gray first. But the idea is that, I mean, I think a lot of people say they want leadership, shy away from it because there's pain to grow. And there's a burden of carrying leadership, but the reward is significant. Oh yeah. I mean, here's what's really cool. And this is, again, to say it with all humility, it's really cool when my parents move to be closer to us as a family, and they go out to a friend's house and they bump into somebody. And so they start talking, like, why'd you move up here? Oh, because my son, grandkids, and the wife live up here. Oh, what does your son do? Oh, he works for Keller Williams. Who is he? Patrick Woods. Oh my gosh. And they start raving about me because I've made some sort of impact. I'm like, I don't even remember that gal's name, but they're raving about me because I've had this multiplication effect and impacted her world in a positive way. Yeah. Like, those are the little things that pop up, and it's stacking those little wins when you're having, because leadership is hard too. Entrepreneurship is hard. Yep. You're going to have failures. You're going to fall short. Leadership does not equate perfection, right? We're still human. We're going to make a bad decision. And I think leadership is also coming in and saying, hey, I made a bad decision. I owe you an apology, and I'm going to make it right. Yeah. So I agree with that. It's interesting too, because a lot of us are goal setters. So we want to say, I'm going to accomplish this by this date, and we either did it or we didn't. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that keeps a lot of people from personal growth and leadership is there really is no finish line. It was interesting. I was talking to a mutual acquaintance of ours the other day
And she had mentioned that she met you like 14 years ago. And her comment was, Patrick's leadership level 14 years ago compared to his leadership now is significantly different. Mm-hmm. Which from someone else's perspective, to see that progression, it's when we're looking at ourselves in the mirror every day, we don't notice ourselves aging or progressing, but this is a lifelong journey.
Yeah, she told me that to my face the other day too, by the way. Oh. I was like, wow, okay, that's brutal honesty. I mean, I just like the thing that I was kind of chuckling in there is like, I'm never going to walk into my house and go, hey, hun, guess what? I cannot get any better as a husband. I have maximized the potential of any husband out there. Congratulations, you have the best on the planet. Like, that's just never going to happen. It's, being a spouse, being a parent, that's a continual journey, just like leadership. Yeah. Right. And I just remember when I got my first role as a team leader at Keller Williams, I was super excited about it. And one of the investors, who was later a massive mentor in my world, he attended my first team meeting, and he went to the guy that hired me after the team meeting. And he goes, I think we made a horrible mistake. Right. And then I ended up running the #1 office in all of Keller Williams. Yeah. And so it's a journey. And I think in that, it's like leadership. Yeah. And so if you want to grow and build a really big world, you need to work on your leadership skills, and you need to have a really stinking great relationship with failure.
Tell me more about that.
Well, you think about it, like if you just took this amazing job and you're excited about it, and then you heard somebody that you looked up to that was kind of an icon within the organization said, I think we made a horrible mistake hiring this person, kind of kick you in the gut or someplace else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so you just have to look at that and go, wow, I have a lot of room to grow. And you just look at it, he wasn't attacking me. He was saying that we could do better in the way that this meeting was presented. And so you just kind of take yourself out of it and go, where do I have room to grow? Just like using the spouse or anything like that, you're going to fall short at some point. You just look at it and go, you know what? I made a commitment to this. How can I get better? And so then for me, combining the leadership and the failure, that's kind of, I tell people that's my superpowers. I'm willing to fail and fail in front of everybody, because I think a lot of people have a lot of people want to look good and be right. Yeah. They want to have the social media post that says they did this in their business, or they have this relationship or whatever, but they're not going to post like, oh my gosh, I did this and had to stroke a check for that or whatever. Right. Yeah. And so to me, it's, if I can show people how to fail and keep moving forward over and over again, it will give them a peace of mind. Like, hey, Patrick's done it. Like this person that you talked to the other day, where she's like, wow, he seems to have accomplished a lot. He's grown as a leader. And I failed my way all the way forward. Yeah. Right? Now she looks at me as somebody different than she looked at me 14 years ago. And I probably made it a safe space for her to be okay with failure as well.
Yep. Right. I love this part of the conversation. The aha I just had is I think the majority of people would say that the word leadership and the word failure were antonyms, right? Opposite ends of the spectrum. And what I'm hearing you say is they're actually very close relatives. Show me any leader that's really a great leader and out in front of their industry. There's a whole list of failures incorporated within that leadership. Totally. And if you're not failing, I would say you're not trying. And if you haven't failed and had to go back to and apologize to somebody, you're probably not a great leader. Right. And so we talk a lot in Keller Williams about this thing called the ceiling of achievement. And that's where I kind of joke and I say, hey, when you take a leadership role, so ceiling of achievement is kind of that point where you're like, I need to grow and be better and do things that are different to break through the other side of that ceiling. When you take a leadership role, the joke is it becomes a brick wall of achievement. You're running into it as hard and as fast as you can, as often as you can. And it's painful at times and it stinks. And the thing I got from you was the more you do that, the more you can anticipate, wow, it's getting kind of tough. What needs to change before it gets really tough? Mm-hmm. And so the thought process I put out there with that kind of feeling, because we're on this talk and not everybody knows what I'm talking about, but that feeling, we've all had it where you feel like, man, can't I just get a break? And then you've also had the feeling of like, man, I am unstoppable right now. Yeah. And those are the bottom end of the ceiling. And then the I'm unstoppable is I've broken through the ceiling, which is flow mode. And if you've experienced flow mode and you know that with the harder it gets, where can't I just get a flipping break means that you're that much closer to breaking through to getting to the unstoppable mode. Yeah.
You remember that feeling? You're gonna love hitting a ceiling because you know flow mode or unstoppable mode is next.
Yeah. Honestly, this has been one of the biggest challenges for my leadership journey in leading other people, is seeing how many people quit right before that little peak, rolling over that top piece, because they've pushed through the pain. And right when the pain's the worst, they're just about there and they retreat. I'm just like, no, you're right there.
Well, I'll give you an example. I was a team leader in the market center that we were shutting down. I was ready to quit being a team leader, right? And had I quit, I'm sure I would have done something else, been successful. But the thing is, what I needed to learn in that moment, that piece would have followed me to wherever I went next, right? Yeah. And had I thrown in the towel there, I never would have gotten the opportunity to come to the Roseville office, which ended up becoming the #1 office in all of Keller Williams, which then created all this additional opportunity for me.
Yep.
Right. And that's part of why I ended up teaching in Utah and how we met.
Yep.
So you just look at that, like, had I thrown in the towel, I would have missed out on all these great things in my world. I'll give you another example. Had I not quit, so I dropped out of college and so I didn't have a degree, and I ended up stumbling into this career down in Los Angeles where I was doing .com stuff, and my income went from really low to actually really good for no college degree. And on one day I quit that job. My dad thought I was crazy to start my own company. Started that company. That was my .com that I owned. And what was really cool about that is, had I not made that decision, we never would have moved into the space that my wife worked at. Right. And so these things where you're like, man, you take these risks and bet on yourself, or you're so close and it gets so painful. There's things on the other side of that you would miss out on. I'm not saying it's going to be horrible if you don't do it, but you may not get to where you want to. And I can certainly look back and go, because I stuck it out, or I took that leap of faith on myself, my world is pretty dang good right now because of persevering or betting on myself.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. I think and again, I think it's that win-win piece of, I know that as I continue to grow and exercise my leadership muscle, yep, in the right way, the next opportunities will present themselves. And the thing that makes me most excited about those next opportunities is what it means for the people within my world that are going on this journey with me, right? Because a new opportunity for me means more opportunity for the people within my world.
And not to get too far out there, but I just think there's so many cool things in this conversation where the .com that I had, we rode that thing up as the market was exploding. We started in '99. And then by 2001, we had the .com bubble burst. September 11th happened. Like, I was making more money on the way up, and I was miserable. Like work nightmares every single night, working 16, 18-hour days, 7 days a week. I remember being in the office on a Saturday on my birthday, and my girlfriend at the time brought me cake and balloons. It was like, sweet, 2 minutes to eat some cake, and I got to get back to work.
Yeah. And
so the crash was awful. And then I got into residential real estate, and I'm running a real estate brokerage, and the market crashes, and I went, this is why I went through that, because now I could lead these people through this. I've already been there to a certain extent, right? I know what hard times look like, different industry, but I don't think there was anybody that was as prepared for what was happening in the real estate world as I was from living through the .com crash, right?
I think that's a reflection of your leadership, because I think that could have been really easy for somebody else to almost go internal, like, am I the problem? Because I rode the down wave. Did I cause this? Right?
Maybe I make slow decisions on which industry I'm gonna jump into. I missed the uptick. I just catch it at the peak. But at the same token, it's, I just look back, and here's the other thing that's kind of crazy about it, is when we had an office that was struggling during the downturn, I said, I want to go run that office. Because if that office fails, which it ultimately did, if that office fails, it's going to impact the rest of our group here in the Sacramento area. So it's just, I don't know. That's where the leadership comes in. I feel like and that goes to some of the other conversations we had about your purpose. Yeah. And mine's about you and I, that's why we get along. It's about impacting lives and making them, again, I don't think people start their own business hoping that they can make $20,000 a year. Yeah. Right. They get into it to have a really big life. And if I can help serve them on that journey, and the great thing about my world is the more I help them accomplish their goals, my world keeps getting bigger. And the more I help them accomplish their goals, the line of people wanting to be in my world that helps make my world bigger gets longer and longer. Yeah. So
Yeah, I love the timing of this conversation just because I feel like our economy has been on such a robust run over the last, 8, 10 years that a lot of people have just been kind of riding this energy of an upswing market.
Yep.
Where I think right now with a lot of changes in the industry, changes in the market, changes in the economy, I think people are starving for leadership and they almost don't know where to find it, and they don't know where to find it internally. What are your thoughts on that right now?
Oh gosh, I mean, it's like no matter what, people have been starving for leadership for a while now, and it's just getting more and more apparent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it, you struggle with that kind of a question because you don't want to go political,
Mm-hmm.
right? But no matter which side of the aisle you're on, the previous president, there were some people that were fully in love with him, and there's people that couldn't stand anything about him and desperately wanted leadership. Now we've got somebody else, and there's people that wanted him, and there's people that are going, this is the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And in our world, so we've had 2020, and I'm trying to think of how to concisely say this. And we went into 2020 with all this excitement, like my 2020 vision, I'm going to set the world on fire. This is my year. Like the whole thought of the year being 2020, and then COVID hits, natural disasters hit, like life still happened in the midst of a pandemic. So you had the valleys of life and a pandemic on top. Now we're in 2021, which feels like a lot like the same, and some things are better and some things are worse.
Yeah.
And people are tired, they're fatigued, and they need somebody that's going to give them hope and paint a compelling vision for their future. So yeah, I think people need leadership now more than ever.
Yeah.
And why not you? Right?
That is a perfect question.
Yeah, there's the Gandhi quote, be the change you want to see in the world, right?
Yeah.
If you want something different, just show up like that. You can't change the world until you change yourself. Like we could keep doing all these quotes all day long, but there's some truth to them, and that's why we keep saying them.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, the truth is a lot of people thought, where everyone was talking about, I can't wait for the world to go back to normal. The truth is that what the world we knew it as normal is over. And so the leaders, this next generation of leaders, the people that step up and say, I want to be a leader, I want to grow my leadership, are going to be the ones that define the new normal. So people can choose to be a part of the creating that new normal and leading people to it, or they can wait for someone else to be the leader and be a result of someone else's leadership.
And I think when they say, I can't wait for the world to go back to normal, they're saying, I can't wait for the world to go back to the way it was.
Yeah, exactly.
Guess what? Today is normal. It's a choice, right? Today is normal. What we aren't going to go back to is the way it was. The world's never going to go back to the way it was.
Yeah.
Right. Tomorrow will be a different normal than today is normal. And I think we just got the other thing that I think needs to happen just on people starving for leadership. People are starving for encouragement. They're starving for grace. They're starving for a high five and a hug.
Yeah.
Right? We see all these videos of people posting the local Karen and all that kind of stuff. And if you're listening, your name's Karen, I love you. But like again, to use another quote, John Maxwell says, how can you tell if somebody needs encouragement? They're breathing. Right. I saw this video the other day of this kid playing on a skateboard, and he was trying this trick, and he was trying it. And this gal walked up to him and she goes, you know what? I've been watching you practice that all day. I've been sitting over here in the park watching you practice that, and you're going to nail it today. And regardless of that, you're going to nail whatever you want to do in life, because I see how hard you're working on that one thing. I'm proud of you. And he was like, he was recording it, just happened to have his GoPro on. He says, that made my day. And guess what? 2 moves later, I nailed it. And I needed to hear that today.
How cool is that?
That was leadership right there. Somebody saw somebody doing something, just went over to say something nice. Where right now it's like, hey, I'm going to take a picture of you and post on social media of what you did wrong. Right. And that's not leadership. That's not affecting change. That's just creating division. So that's where I think the leadership comes in, is being the voice, a different voice in our environment right now. In a world that wants to point out what's wrong with it, let's point out what's right with it.
Right with it. I love that perspective. I love the comment you just made too about the idea of today being normal. As you kind of were talking about that, the idea popped in my mind of like, actually there's 100% truth to that. Is the thing that is the same today as it was pre-pandemic is that day I woke up and I had choices of how to direct my life that day. And it's the same for me today, regardless of what's going around me today. I get to wake up and decide how do I choose to move forward?
Yeah. Like I would love for a day when we don't have social media. It's not going to happen. Right. It's there's things that I have control over and there's things that I don't have control over. I have control over how I show up every single day. I don't have control over how anybody else shows up. I typically don't have control of the first thought that pops in my head. I do have control of the second thought. Right. And it's just making that conscious decision that I want to make a difference. I want to impact people's lives, including my own, including my family. Yeah. Right. Acting a plan and getting there. And that's it. You know, you think about real estate and people want to build these big businesses. And heck, if you're building a solid business, like if I'm building it in, again, real estate context, if I'm doing really great with my clients, my business is going to grow to a point where I can't possibly do all that business by myself without dropping the ball and taking off some clients. So I'll need to have people in my world. Yeah. If I don't hone my leadership skills, my business has a ceiling on it. Yeah. And it could go backwards. So I've loved our conversation. Let's shift to application. So you're one of the top business coaches in the country, particularly around leadership. I think everyone that's listening to this right now is getting this little fire burning in their belly about, hey, I want to grow my leadership, whether that's self-leadership or leadership leading other people. But if you were coaching this group, the Enchilada Nation right now, where to start their leadership journey? Like, how do we start this? Well, one, I take a self-assessment, right? So by that, I mean like, hey, look around. Is anybody following you? Mm-hmm. Again, John Maxwell says, if you're a leader and nobody's following you, you're not a leader, you're just out on a walk, right? So take a self-assessment, see who's following you and see whose world you can impact. Grab somebody. I guarantee you, so here's how you can take action. One is make a plan for what you want to accomplish in life, right? And there's many tools out there. The book that obviously I would recommend is The One Thing, which will give you a plan on how to set big goals for your long-term future, all the way down to what does my calendar look like today. So it's going to start with self-leadership. Then the second piece I would do is I'd say, who in my world could I bring along on the journey? And I think that there's a lot of things in life that are counterintuitive, right? So if I'm having a bad day, I'm going to say, you know what? I just need to go in my office, shut the door, put my head down and grind it out. And if I do that, what are the odds of me actually shutting my door, putting my head down and grinding it out? Slim to none. I'll probably end up on Facebook, TikTok, something different for everybody, but I'm not likely to do that. What I need to do is get more energy. And so the way that I do that is open my door, go hang out with somebody that's crushing their day, right? And then when I'm having a good day, go find somebody else that can hang out with me when I'm crushing it so they can get my good energy. Right. So find your tribe, hang out with some people and pour into each other and invite other people along the journey. So I know on the podcast, they can't quite see this, but there's a spiritual law of business that says, I can't get from here to here. So I can't go to the next level until I help somebody else get to their next level. Right. So that's how you hone your leadership skills, is be vulnerable, set goals for yourself and invite somebody else along on the journey. Yeah, I love that. I mean, in both of our organizations within the KW infrastructure, I love the way we've set up the Agent Leadership Council. Is the idea of we want to hone those leadership skills. How do you bring that next group of agents up to your level of leadership, which is only going to open the door for your next level of leadership? Yeah, it makes you more attractive to people that get leadership at a higher level. Yeah. Right. Because there's management and there's leadership, and leaders resonate with other leaders when you choose that path. Like we're talking about, like everybody's a leader and then there's a chosen leadership path. Yep. And I can tell you that's why you and I get along, is because we both chosen that path and we both speak the same language and we both show up very similarly for our people. Yeah. It's very apparent very quick, right? And so if you're doing that, you're going to attract people that are beyond you into your world that now you can emulate and follow and lean on and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. The only other thing I throw out there on that journey is get your tribe, find those people that you could really be candid with. So I did this with my group. I shouldn't say I created, I kind of did. I hand selected people that I got energy from. And those are the people we started a group text back in the day. And we would, hey, I'm struggling with this, right? Being vulnerable with those people is leadership. Hey, and then we had this other thing, may I approach the brag table? Right. So when you get asked to be on a panel at a big event, it's not something you're necessarily going to post on social media, because you don't want people looking at you going like, wow, that guy is full of himself. But you do want to celebrate the wins. Right. Yeah. so get your tribe so you can share stuff like that. And then I guess the last thing that I would say is stack small wins, right? Because 2020 and 2021 threw us a curveball, and there's, again, the world is looking at what's not working and what's wrong a lot. And that forces us to, or causes us to start looking at what's not going well in our world. And the reality is that we can engineer wins. And so I'll give you the example on this. Lauren, who's my head of operations, she started out as my admin and grew up to this. Somewhere in there, I put her in as a financial, what we call a market center administrator. So she took one accounting class and I made her in charge of a whole business doing the accounting, right? And I watched her energy go down, 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 down. And she was having a really bad day. She called me up and she was in tears going, man, I am horrible at my job. And, and I've shared this story so many times, so she's fine with me sharing it. I said, okay, stop. I love you. You're going to get through this. And here's what you need to do. Before you do anything else, like, you need to do this. we're going to hang up and you're going to go talk to 5 people and you're going to tell them why you're grateful for them. So go do that right now and then call me back. She expressed her gratitude to 5 people in the office, call me back. And she was like on cloud 9. She's like, oh my gosh, I went to so-and-so's office. I told them how much I appreciated them. They were crying. I was crying. And so just little things on leadership is expressing gratitude. It's the highest form of energy. And to me, everything we do is about energy, right? And so if we're having a bad day and we can't lead ourselves, go be grateful for somebody else or to somebody else and express that. And it will shift your energy so that you can have the bucket filled. Like people say, I can't pour from an empty bucket. Well, guess what? You get to go fill your own bucket by filling somebody else's bucket.
Yeah.
Right. So you can strategically stack your wins to give you the energy so you can pour into other people when they're having a bad day.
I think this is such beautiful advice, because I think a lot of times if someone feels like they're starting the journey to leadership, they have this vision of themselves on the top of the pyramid, right? How do I climb the ladder to the top of the leadership ladder? And what you're telling me is the exact opposite. You don't start the vision with the top of the pyramid. You started at the bottom of, how do I express gratitude for those around me?
And it could be your boss, it could be your employee, it could be your friend. It doesn't matter. Just like, gratitude is the highest form of energy. And when we're doing something that's not about us, we're going to be rewarded by it. Like, I got this great text from one of my agents the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just wanted you to know how much that meant to me. And I screenshot it and sent it to my wife. I told her I did that. And I asked her the other day, I said, hey, how did you feel when you got my response to your text? She's like, oh my gosh, that was awesome. It made me feel so good that I made that impact on you. I said, were you smiling when you got my text back? She goes, yeah. Right. And so by her saying that random act of kindness impacted her day, not just mine.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the things, like, those are the little life hacks. When you're having a bad day, you can do that. And again, it's about self-leadership and knowing that I'm having a bad day. I need to get out of myself and go express gratitude so I can show up and be the best version of myself for the people I need to lead.
Yeah.
So
I love that. I think you brought up some incredible points. I'm excited to actually come back and listen to the last 4 minutes of this conversation again, just because there was a lot of little nuggets there. I mean, to get clarity on what you want to accomplish with your leadership, have a reality conversation around where you're at with your current self-leadership, identify who around you has an expectation of you as a leader, and are you showing up the way they need you to? How does your energy show up? I mean, I'm sitting here taking notes of all these little nuggets you're dropping, of like asking myself the question of like, all right, here I am viewed as a leader. How am I showing up for my people? How's my energy right now? When I walk out of a conversation with someone within my world, am I picking them up or am I drawing them down? So there's some responsibility with this, but there was a lot of great nuggets in that last 4 minutes.
It's leadership is about influence, right? And it's one with ourselves and all that. So I don't want to take up too much time. I just think, like, as you're saying that, I remember one day I just walked into my controller's office and I said, hey, I need you to cut me 4 checks. And he cut them, and I walked out to the staff and I handed out checks. It wasn't payday. It wasn't anything. It was just like, I know you're working really hard. And like, they weren't that big of checks, but to them, it was everything.
The unexpected.
Yeah. And so those are the little moments. And guess who felt really great about doing it? This guy.
Yeah.
Right. Because it made a difference. And it wasn't about the money. It was about making a difference. And it was on a Friday. So those are all the little things that, that's leadership to me, is, making their world better than than it would be someplace else, because they make my world better with them in it. And I think a lot of times we think, like you said, how do we climb that mountain, or how do we climb that ladder? The best thing I ever heard was, you spend all your life climbing the ladder and then you realize the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall, right? So to me, that mountain that we're climbing is actually inverted, and we're not going to get to the top of that mountain unless we're supporting the, like, whenever everybody asks me what I do, like when Scott, my team leader in Roseville, says, hey, tell people what you do, I literally say, I work for Scott and I work for you guys. You guys are my boss, period. Right? And that's what makes this office and these companies so much fun to be a part of. That's also why we're doing so much cool stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, agreed. Well, let's I could talk to you all day, and
I know,
there's days I call you for a 5-minute conversation, and an hour later we're still rolling. But
totally, I could keep talking. I got the little hint that you were kind of wrapping up there, and I just kept rambling. So
no, this has been amazing. I just want to respect our people's time, and I look forward to having you back on our next another episode as well. But let's summarize a little bit what we talked about. So I'm going to talk through a couple ahas I had, and then I'm going to give you the last couple minutes of whatever you want to share to wrap up. But here's the summary of what I kind of got from our conversation, and how I think it applies to the Enchilada Nation. As a group, we're focused on how do we live this balanced life across multiple platforms, right? The majority of our followers, and it's incredible to me, the influence and the following we've got so far with the Enchilada Nation across multiple countries. It's gone faster to more places than I even anticipated, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And I think what that tells me is a lot of us are starving for this conversation. As entrepreneurs, we're go-getters, we're hustlers, we make things happen at times at our own expense, right? We're so determined to win that sometimes we're burning bridges and relationships that we don't even anticipate to burn. And so this idea of how do we live that balanced life across multiple aspects? Well, I'm a CEO at business, but I'm not a CEO in my home. That being said, I'm a leader in my business, but I am a leader in my home. I am a lead. So every hat that I wear has an element of leadership to it. Yep. So if there's one skill set that I think is really critical for us and the Enchilada Nation to embrace right now, is leadership to the level you need to lead in your world right now. And that may just be starting with self-leadership. That may be just analyzing, am I holding myself accountable to the results and the level that I know I should be achieving, and focusing on self-leadership. But what I will tell you is, as you become a better self-leader, you will start attracting other people around you that also are starving for leadership. This goes back to the comment we made earlier. I think the world is starving for leaders that will inspire them and lead them to where they want to go now. And I loved how you said it. Why not you? So that's what I think that I'd really love for our group to hear today is, the world needs leaders. Why not you?
Yeah. And if a big group of people just made the decision to be a positive influence on the world around them, like at their house, at their place of work, at their kids' soccer games, imagine the ripple effect that could have. And because the ripple effect is going completely the opposite direction right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, I think there's a book, I forget the name of the book, it's by the new CEO of Microsoft, and it talks about empathetic leadership. And the turnaround that Microsoft has done, and I don't know where they are now, so I can't really say, but the turnaround they did after Steve Ballmer left and he took over, because of that style of leadership, it became less top down, about really being empathetic with their people, and the change of the culture that made. And then their company really started turning around. People were leaving Microsoft to go work at these other cooler companies and more fun companies. And I have a great thing going on over there. So I think the thing that I would look at is, one, how are we take a step back and say, how am I showing up? Am I doing little things like, am I seeking first to understand before I rush to judgment, stay in curiosity? So I'm a big fan of Ted Lasso. There's a great quote on Ted Lasso about staying in curiosity. You can Google it. And the other thing is, just don't do what comes naturally, do the counterintuitive thing, right? If you feel like leadership is having to babysit somebody, maybe flip the script on that and say, what does this person need that they're not getting? Where are they struggling, and why are they showing up that way? And how can I impact them for the positive, right? If I'm having a bad day, what can I do to impact somebody else's day for the positive that will impact my day for the positive? If I'm not winning, and you know, if I'm not winning and I'm stressed out and tired, what can I do to create a win? I could pick up the phone and call a friend I haven't talked to in a long time and have a win.
Yeah.
I could go spend 30 minutes with one of my team members and take them out to lunch, invest in them, and have a win.
Love it.
There you go.
Well, Patrick, thanks again for spending the time with us. You've been on my list of wanting to get on for some time, just because I know that your impact for me and my organization and my people has been tremendous. And I'm excited to share you with the rest of the community. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody, thanks for being on, and don't forget, go live life on your terms. Thank you.